Good morning. Paths to God by Ram Dass. We feel a need for spiritual practices because we feel intuitively drawn to them. Something within us is simply nudging us. We see the dilemma in that because we know that all our dramas, including the drama of getting enlightened, are just more veils, and that veils keep us from seeing who we really are. So getting enlightened keeps us from getting enlightened. But then that becomes the incentive for deepening our practices still further, so they're coming from a purer place, and the cycle continues. We realize that there is nothing at all to do, but in a state of total openness to all the possibilities in our lives, we are drawn to work on ourselves. The Gita embraces a spiritual path of engagement in the world rather than withdrawal from it. The Gita is a path of yoga that's designed for a life of action rather than a life of contemplation. And it tells us how to carry on our spiritual quest right in the midst of our lives in the world. It spells out the way we can do that by offering all of our actions to God, by acting without any attachment, and by acting without seeing ourselves as the actors. Before we arrive at that place of pure, detached action, we will go through a lot of other levels first, and each one will contribute its own little piece to our spiritual practice. For instance, if we're still acting from the feeling, I ought to do karma yoga, our actions will come tarnished with guilt and anger, and to that extent, they aren't pure karma yoga. However, that very impurity will become the force that drives us to reflect more deeply about our actions. And then, as we do, and as our wisdom gets clearer, our motivation will get pure and our karma yoga will change. Work with sacrificing what you do every day to your higher consciousness. Sacrifice it all to your awakening, each thing you do, all day long. If you're driving a car, if you're getting gas, if you're making the bed, if you're brushing your teeth, if you're going to the toilet, whatever it is you're doing, make it grist for the mill of your awakening. Any act we perform can be looked at in a worldly way, or it can be looked at from a different vantage point, a vantage point that redefines who we are and what it is we're doing here. Am I just brushing my teeth, or am I brushing my teeth as a way of going to God? It's a choice. And that process of shifting our vantage point is profound. It's really a process of recreating our perceptual field, recreating our entire universe act by act. We can turn any part of our lives into a sacrifice, into an offering, even our negative feelings. If you have cravings, let us bring them into consciousness, seeing the full extent of our attachments. If we can look at those attachments from the outside, from the place of witness, we won't get quite so sucked in by our sense desires all the time. If our minds aren't always going outward so much, they'll be free to turn inward, back to the light. That's what the austerities are about. When they make us feel joyful because we're releasing ourselves from something that's holding us back from God, that's a good indication that renunciation is the right practice at the moment. On the other hand, if we're gritting our teeth and doing it all in order to be good, then maybe we should wait a while. When we start measuring how much can I give up, that's a pretty good indication that righteousness has crept in. I've given up sex, and I've given up meat, and I've given up milk, and I've given up... what an ego trip that is. That's just being attached to being non-attached, and you haven't even begun to renounce renouncing. The practice of renunciation is ultimately about renouncing our suffering over this or that. And when that happens, the whole melodramatic part of the renunciation trip starts to fade away. The game isn't to see how little food we can eat or how little sex we can have or how few clothes we can wear. That's nonsense. The point of the game is to be free, not attached to having, not attached to not having, but free. Renunciation is a means to an end. Once we're free, renunciation is irrelevant. The minute we're free of attachment, we can use or not use anything in the universe. In fact, it all then becomes ours to use. All the energy of the universe is free energy, and once we are free, it's all there for us to use. But that's only after we are without attachments, because only then can we be trusted with the keys to the kingdom. When we are without desires, without attachments, we will act only when we are drawn by our dharma to act. There will be nothing we're looking to get from the situation that would take us away from doing our karma yoga perfectly.